Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all. Thank you for coming tonight. So before we begin, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Licia Rester Frazee, and I'm the Managing Director of Programs, Admissions, and Marketing here at the University of Santa Monica. And before we begin, we're going to just do a couple of housekeeping notes. So we are streaming tonight. You'll notice that there are cameras, 2 cameras covering. If you would prefer not to be on camera streaming, I encourage you just to ask one of the staff members just to set up a chair. You can see where Sadi is sitting. He's waving right behind there near the sound. We don't film in that area, so feel free to move over there. Also, if you wouldn't mind turning off your cell phones or turning them on mute right now, just so that we can support the folks who are coming in from all over the world on video. And lastly, if you are selected to share this evening with Drs. Ron or Mary Hulnick, if you could please go to the back of the room and sign a release for us at the end of the night, that would be awesome. So it is such a pleasure to be here and to welcome you to the University of Santa Monica. And a big heartfelt welcome to all those who are joining us on the stream. Thank you so much for coming tonight as well. Tonight's event, What is Soul-Centered Living? An Introduction to Spiritual Psychology. And we are known, USM is known as the best in the world for its programs in spiritual psychology, and that's what we're going to be exploring tonight. You're going to learn about the transformational 10-month certificate program in soul-centered living and how it can support you in living a life of joy, fulfillment, success, well-being. It's an incredible program, and so you will be exploring tonight, well, how can this program support me specifically in living that kind of life? So USM is also known as the Worldwide Center for the Study and Practice of Spiritual Psychology. And when we say worldwide, that is no exaggeration. We have students coming here once a month from all over the country and all over the world. We have had students participate and have flown in from Kenya, from Canada, from Ecuador, from England, Mexico, and Japan. We recently had a student who flew in from Dubai once a month, and also Kazakhstan. Now, I actually had to look that country up on the map. I had no idea where Kazakhstan was, so that was a learning for me. And they fly in because really this program is so unique. It's really a testimony that people would literally fly that far every month to attend these programs. I remember a father and daughter used to fly in from the northern part of Norway. Now, if you don't know where that is a 26-hour commute one way. So if you live in Orange County, and you're like, oh, an hour and a half commute? Oh, I don't know. That's tough. You got to take that one off the table. So what does it mean to live a soul-centered life? What does that mean? And how can you experience that? How can this support you in living that kind of life? These are the questions that we're going to explore tonight, and you're in for a treat. Because the 2 people that are best able to answer those questions, who in fact have devoted over 35 years in supporting thousands of people around the world and answering those questions for themselves, are your facilitators tonight. Drs. Ron and Mary Hulnick are pioneers and worldwide leaders in the field of spiritual psychology. They are renowned educators. They are the founding faculty and the co-directors of the University of Santa Monica, where they have been designing, developing, and facilitating these life-changing programs for over 35 years. Both are licensed marriage and family therapists, and Mary is also a licensed clinical psychologist. And their book, Loyalty to Your Soul, The Heart of Spiritual Psychology, which was published by Hay House, is now printed in 8 languages and 12 countries worldwide. Their latest book, Remembering the Light Within, a course in soul-centered living, was just published by Hay House in February of this year. Many of you may have are already familiar with that. Those books are also available for purchase in the back of the room. On a personal note, I have had the deep privilege of working very closely with Ron and Mary for 20 years now, actually. It's flown. And I can tell you from years of direct experience, these two are master facilitators. They walk their talk, and they are two of the people that are the most devoted to supporting individuals in awakening into the majesty, the magnificence, the joy, the loving of who they truly are. So please join me in welcoming USM's President and Chief Creative Officer, Drs. Ron and Mary Hulnick.
Thank you, Lucia. Well, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I see a lot of familiar faces and quite a few new faces, too. And to everyone online, we're delighted that you're joining us as well.
I'm looking online to see who's here. My psychic abilities. Oh, John Dale! He hasn't missed one yet. Where he is, it's, if I make it right, it's 9:30 tomorrow morning. John, you can email me and let me know if that's true. He's in Thailand. So, wow. First to share about this is, it's a very special thing that we perceive, and so we will do our best to assist you in having at least some kind of a sense of what this is all about, because it is a relatively new thing. It is something that is starting to gain traction worldwide. This year alone, we've had workshops in Tehran. Thank you for hosting one there, and in Israel and in several other places. This is starting to go out there now. And that's one of the reasons we announced that this coming year is the last year that Mary and I will be personally facilitating the 9-month programs, because we need to free ourselves up to be more available to doing these things in a larger way. We're exploring the Zoom technology. That seems very promising, and we hope to have one workshop in August. We call it the Zoom effect. Those of you who don't know what that is, it's kind of like Skype on steroids. I mean, you really, it's nice, very interactive. So anyway, let's get on with what we're going to talk about this evening. And what is soul-centered living? An introduction to spiritual psychology. That's our title for this evening. And we want to be very, very, very clear. There are many systems that people utilize to assist themselves in what they would refer to as the process of spiritual awakening. And those who are involved in that, in living a soul-centered life. The one that we've been developing and practicing here at USM for the past 35 years is what we call spiritual psychology. The thing we like the most about it is that it is not in conflict with any other system. In fact, it encompasses any other system that people use. And as we move forward, you'll hopefully get a sense of that for yourself. So I'm really going to be doing this presentation. We have just found that when we're presenting like this, it becomes challenging if you're trying to go back and forth. So I got elected And I'll do my best.
I know you will.
And then living spiritual psychology. So USM's mission is communicating the psychology worldwide through the process of soul-centered education. And we'll talk more about what that means. So to get going here, we find that we have to really distinguish different meanings of different words, because these words are very often taken to mean something, and we may be meaning them in a different way. So we'll just take a little bit of time here and share with you what we're talking about. So let's begin by looking at the words knowledge and education. And these words may seem obvious, but they're not so obvious. And it's important to distinguish the difference. So if you look up the word knowledge, what you're going to find is something like to know about or to know of. To know about, to know. And people, our entire educational system in this country is built on that notion that you take courses and you learn about stuff. And if you take a lot of courses and really get good, you could even get a doctorate in learning about stuff. And that's fine. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And education is a body of acquired knowledge. And people spend a lot of time in schools doing this. So less known is that the word knowledge in Greek comes from the word gnosis. And what it means is to know something, not to know about it, but to know it experientially. Like, you would never say, I know about the light being on. The light's on, you experience it. I would never say, I know about Mary. I know Mary. Mary knew. So you get the sense, experientially is the way that we really learn things. I know when I was many years ago studying to be a private pilot, get my single engine land rating, which I did, you could read a lot of books about flying. It's not until you get behind the wheel of that plane at 5,000 feet that you get a sense of what flying is all about. So to know experientially, very, very, very important. Education really comes from the Latin word educare, which means to draw out that which lies within. And so I forget who it was who said that education is not the filling of a pail with knowledge. It's not the filling of a pail.
Of a bucket.
Of a bucket. It's the lighting of a fire. So to bring forth from within. Now that assumes there's something within that is worth bringing forth. So we're going to be really talking this evening about those two words, knowledge and education. To know something experientially, and also to draw out something from within. So just a way to start the conversation. So we talk about soul-centered education, just like we talk about soul-centered living. And we had a really wonderful experience in discussing this with the Dalai Lama. And he had said, and one of his favorite quotes is that, "My hope and wish is that one day formal education will pay attention to what I call education of the heart." See, he knew about the experiential nature of it. And he was completely in agreement with what we were sharing with him about what we're doing. In fact, in the next talk that he gave right after the one we were in, he was telling these politicians in Canada that we teach compassion. He said, you should learn about compassion the way they do it at the University of Santa Monica in California. I thought, whoa, that's probably the biggest compliment I'm ever going to receive in my entire life. So here at USM, education is education of the heart. It's about drawing forth something from within, not filling your head with stuff. You get plenty of that too. But bringing out something that is, for most people, buried deeply within. So this is what we're going to talk about this evening. And, okay, so spiritual psychology, what is it and what difference does it make? Glad you asked. So here comes another two words, psychology. If you look that up in the dictionary, the science of mind and behavior. Everybody knows that. We go to therapists, they're all well-versed in all of this stuff. But if you look up the word psyche in the dictionary, you'll find breath, principle of life, soul. How did that become the science of mind and behavior? Good question. I still don't know the answer. I think it's probably because it's easier to measure things like mind and behavior than it is breath, principle of life, and soul. So you get the direction that we're going here. So spiritual psychology, in a sense, we're bringing it back to what it was inspired for in the beginning. And it recognizes a spiritual reality and begins with the principle that a better description of us as humans who have souls is really, we're souls who have come here and we're having a human experience. Or these days we're saying we are souls using a human experience. For what purpose? What are we doing here? And these funny looking bodies running around here. One thing and one thing only, and that is awakening. We're here to remember that which is our essence. This is not a new idea. There are several systems. All the saints and mystics have been telling us this for thousands of years. But it's at this point in time in the history of humanity that we can now bring this forward in a much larger way so that people can experience it and start to live into that sense of awakening. So, we define spiritual psychology as the study and practice of conscious awakening. Conscious awakening. And what does awakening mean? Glad you asked. In order to give you a sense of this, now, please know I realize fully that we're doing knowledge and the learning about right now. But that's fine, because it is very helpful to have a context within which you can take this information and make some sense of it. Because I have seen many, many people over time, they can move into, have a spiritual experience, come out the other side, and never even know that they had one, because they didn't have the context to understand what it was that they experienced. So we're going to talk a little bit about this tonight. So, we have this line here on the horizontal line. You notice there's a negative and a positive to it. And we call this physical world reality, or we call it the goal line. It's an easy way to refer to it. Because in physical world reality, most people are interested in achieving goals. The goal may be a better job, the goal may be a better relationship, the goal may be become an Olympic star. It can be anything. But we measure our success, and we tend to think of it in terms of movement in that positive direction. While all that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we're certainly not against that. I mean, if we were against that, we wouldn't be sitting here with a PowerPoint and so we are living in this physical world reality. But is that all there is? Is that all there is? Is that it? So, turns out there's a whole other reality that is going on at the same time. Licia, do I have to aim this in this direction to get the... Really? The screen? No, it went too far. Wow. I'm not going to do that again. All right. So, in addition to the physical world reality and the goal line, there's this other line that goes straight up, which we refer to as the spiritual context or the soul line of life. Goal line, soul line. Makes it real easy to know what we're talking about. Well, there's no positive negative here, but yet there's an upward motion. What does that signify? What happens as you go up this line? Every spiritual teaching of any value, and every religion for that matter, the ones who started the religion, we're in total unity about this. What you always achieve as you awaken is you move into this thing called love. Not as a thing you move into, like a new car, but as a state of consciousness where you exist in that state. You like wake up into a different way of being. It's as if the lights had been dimmed and all of a sudden now it's bright and you see more clearly. This is what the whole idea of spirituality is really all about. It's about this upward motion that we refer to as awakening. Now what's interesting is that because of where we are in the evolution of humanity, the whole, let's call it the total of consciousness on the planet is shifting. It's shifting both in a positive direction. You know, things like we have things now that we never had. If you think about it, all of the paved roads on all the cars in the world have come into being in the last 100 years. In 1918, there were hardly any cars running around at all. Roads, forget about it. Things are moving fast. So that would be movement in this direction for us all. At the same time, people are also becoming more conscious. Now, it may not seem that way as you look around the world, but the truth of the matter is that per capita, meaning according to the number of people living here now, believe it or not, this is the most peaceful time that has ever existed in history. Really, I kid you not. You could check that out if you want. And so these gains have been both gains on the goal line and gains in spiritual awakening. But where do you go to get educated from that place when the educational system is still down here for most people? Because we're still trying to get the same big jobs and everything else. But that's changing. And so people interested in awakening typically are also interested in three essential questions we have found over time. People are asking more and more frequently these days, who am I? Who am I really? What is my purpose? And you hear a lot more about that these days, especially in business orientations. And what am I doing here? What is this all for? And the big one, and how can I make a more meaningful contribution and live a more fulfilling life? There are more nonprofit organizations on the planet now by far than there ever have been before. So, what's involved in awakening? Well, the best description of that we ever became aware of was by a Persian mystic poet, Jalaluddin Rumi. Because you would think that what's involved in awakening? Well, I have to do something and then I'll awaken, so I have to take some kind of action or do something, which is a typical goal line approach. But that's not what Rumi said. What Rumi said was, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. It's not something you do, it's rather something you take away from your awareness inside, and then that which is there is revealed. And so The essence of spiritual psychology then is, and this is what we add to it, and to dissolve them. This is the technology that we have learned how to use. We know how to identify those barriers, and we know how to dissolve them. Now, we can't dissolve them for you. You have to do something, like participate. So let's look and see how this works. So if you'll notice, there's 5 lines here, and there's the physical world, that's that goal line thing, and then there's, if you go inside, first thing you run into is this thing called the mind, what we think about everything. But as we go deeper inside, there's something called the emotions, how we feel about things. And in case you didn't know, the mind and the emotions together is what psychologists refer to as the ego. That's what, when they talk about that, that's what they mean. It's your mind in conjunction with feelings because they're related. We'll talk about that in a minute. Beneath that, there's an unconscious level. And there's a lot of work going on these days about plumbing the depths of the unconscious. And our experience is leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's unconscious for darn good reason. Don't go meddling in there. What we have found is that the stuff in there is generally in there because you're not ready to really see it yet. And when you get ready, as you awaken, it'll be released like time release capsules. And we've just seen this over and over and over again. Also, people have a lot of creativity stored in the unconscious they don't know about. And that gets released as well as you're ready to move forward into it. Now here's that polarity, because these things are all aligned with each other. So, beneath that is this thing called the authentic self. Now you'll notice the authentic self has no duality. No duality. Well, what happens when I have an experience and I access that part of me that's the authentic self? Well, what you experience is unconditional love. That's all. It has subsidiaries, such as little things. Peace, acceptance, compassion, beauty, joy, freedom, gratitude, human happiness, and there are others. So are you saying that to the degree that I awaken to who I am, I start living my life more from here and less than here? That's exactly what I'm saying. You mean there are people walking around on the planet that are really living this way? Oh yes, more than you might think. More than you might think. I'd like to say they're all USM grads, but that would not be true. So, what happens? Let's put this map in motion. What happens? Well, in our classes, the way we used to do them, people would have a project. And let's say you wanted to write a book. And I wanted to write a book for so long, but I don't know what. So we said, look, how many pages will you write for this coming month? 30 pages. Okay. End of 1 month, you have written 30 pages. Now you're in trouble. Because what you have done is that you have transformed 30 pages of what used to be negative energy into positive energy. This is where the fun begins. Because you're now out of balance psychologically. Out of balance psychologically. So a message goes down in your consciousness. And it says, well, Ron wrote the 30 pages. He must want to really write this book. So your own consciousness is going to bring forward all of the mental, emotional, and any related unconscious material associated with why you didn't write the 30 pages all along. That's a scary proposition. We're venturing into the unknown. I'm sorry, gotta go there. Gotta go there. So you're successful. You deal with all of that material that came up, and you're now back in that same position again. And then we go, of course, how about next month? Another 30 pages? and on and on and on it goes. Awakening is not necessarily an easy process. How many people ever read the book or looked at the book, The Teachings of Don Juan? Anybody ever remember that one? It goes back a ways. He rightly said, when you start to awaken, the first thing you're going to run into, what he called natural enemies, is fear. He said the way you get through fear is you keep doing the thing you're afraid to do while being fully afraid to do it. Because that's how you teach yourself there's nothing to be afraid of. You did the thing and it worked out fine. So this is one way to look at it. More familiar, and those of you who've seen this, you haven't seen this slide yet. More familiar, the way it happens is something outside happens and you are disturbed. You might get upset, you might get angry, you might just not like it, you may judge it, you may do all of these things. For example, an example of that might be, we could probably point to a certain election that happened not too long ago. A lot of people moved into disturbance. Now, they think they're disturbed at what happened in the physical world. This is the way most of us, I'm upset because something happened out there. But really, if you think about it, nothing outside has the power to disturb your peace, really, unless you give it that power. Where do we give it that power? We give it that power in our minds. The only thing you ever really get angry about is that something happened not the way you would have liked it to happen. Then we get all upset. The degree to which we get upset is the degree to which it goes against the way we think that things should be. The process is the same. It brings up things on these levels, we work to heal them, and we find ourselves at a more positive place inside. So if you think that what I'm saying here is considering shifting from an out there orientation to an inside orientation, you're 100% right. So, how do we really work with this? You understand, anything you see, you're just seeing what is. It has no charge on it one way. That's what is. No matter what it is, that's what is. We put the charge on it. So, David Hawkins, who was an incredibly brilliant psychiatrist, he said, perception is edited observation. We observe, we edit, and then that's what we perceive. And he said it happens in 1/10,000th of a second. That's pretty quick. That's why we think it's in what's going on out there. But it's not. It's in the editing. Well, who does the editing? Your ego. Your ego does the editing. The authentic self doesn't edit anything. It's just filled with love. What does it do the editing based upon? Based upon what? Your personal beliefs. What you hold to be true. We were at a workshop, the Sun Valley Wellness Festival we were at a couple of weeks ago, where we presented largely the same information. And I met this guy there who was, his name was Rabbi Rumi. He was a Hasidic Jewish rabbi who did not believe in God. I kid you not. But his point wasn't that there is no such thing. His point was, if that's my belief, I need to behave in such a way that I test that belief to see if it has validity. I thought, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Or one time, Eckhart Tolle was on Oprah, and at the end of the show, Oprah had these questions she asked people, and she says to Eckhart, what do you believe? Eckhart looked at her and he said, not much. I thought, that's great. That is really excellent. Therefore, what you believe determines what you perceive and what you will experience. I can't emphasize that enough. So, this is part of the nature of the work. What are those barriers that Rumi was talking about? What is it? Okay, my beliefs. I guess I could change my beliefs. Well, not so quick. Not so quick, because now they have been conditioned and they seem to be, what shall we say, stuck inside. I don't know a different way to say it. So how do I work with that? So what are these barriers? Well, the major barrier is when we move into this business of I am upset because. Now, get the way this works. I am upset because blah, 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 blah happened out there. It might be more accurate to say I get upset when this and this and this happens. So I am upset because is probably the biggest contagious disease on the planet today. Why do we do that? Well, because we get to be upset and we get to be right. Wow, that's heaven for the ego. Get to be both upset and right. That's fantastic. All I have to do is blame it on what's going on out there. Psychologists are aware of this. It's known as projection. We project onto other people so we don't have to see it inside of ourselves. But we don't realize the only way we can get free of it is if we look at it inside of ourselves. Because that's the only place that you can let it go. So, I'm upset because if you run this, where would you think you're going to look to produce change? You're going to try to change what's going on out there, whatever it is that you think is causing it. Good luck. I've never met anybody who succeeded in doing that, but doesn't stop us from continuing to try. It's also a total and complete victim position. So anytime you're disturbed by anything that's going on outside, you're in a total victim position. You're allowing that thing to determine what your emotional experience is going to be in that moment. No matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter at all. So we once asked in class, what are some of the major upsets that people have? And so, we had people raising their hand and we asked, how many of you have that one? The number one upset that we found was, I'm upset because you don't listen to me. Not that anybody in here would run that, but there was this woman who stood up and she said, my boyfriend says I don't listen to him. That is so hard to hear. Okay. Here's another popular one. I'm upset because people don't understand me. Everybody should understand me. It's a rule. And when people don't, there's something wrong with them, and I get upset. Everyone knows that. I'm upset because life is unfair. Life's supposed to be fair. It's written somewhere. Life is fair. Whatever that means. In the spiritual context, life is fair, no matter what's going on. I'm upset because I'm working too hard. This is a big one today. A lot of people are really working very, very, very hard, long hours, and getting sick in the process. I'm upset because I'm working too hard. I'm upset because I don't behave I can get upset at myself. I don't behave as like I should. And if all else fails, If all else fails, especially if you live in Los Angeles, I'm upset because traffic is terrible. No argument, no argument there. So, what's the alternative? Is there an alternative? So here's where it gets interesting. What if, rather than doing I'm upset because and blaming whatever is going on out there, what if there was a way that you could go inside and connect up somehow with the place inside that is upset? Rather than looking out there, if you could, let's say, close your eyes and go and connect with the place that's upset. And what if you could heal that, as in dissolve it, erase it? What would happen? Well, based on 36 years worth of experience, because it's always the same thing, what happens is, this is what you find. In other words, it takes you right into that place of loving, or right down into that authentic self level. Is this possible? We were never taught that in school. My parents never told me this. Well, we're here to tell you not only is it possible, you're going to do it sooner or later because that's what we're here for. And in a way, we've already waited long enough. We don't have to wait anymore because the technology is available. So, in order to understand this next part, I have to use an analogy here. So, it has to do with context. Now, for those of you who might not understand that word, context is like what is happening, like you're in the context of this classroom right now. Probably a good example, let's say you're standing outside and the airplane is going ahead. So your context is you're standing outside and there's an airplane going on overhead. But what if you were in the airplane? So your context now, you're in the same place, basically, but your context is you're in that airplane, you're looking down at this that is below you, but you're not down there, you're up here. You get that sense. So context has to do with where you are at any given moment, the environment that you're in. So if you want to do this work, if you're really interested in this, and here it comes, the first major step is that you must be willing to take responsibility for the upset that's going on inside of you and quit blaming it on others. I'm sorry, it's not my idea. This is very challenging. Why is it challenging? The ego hates that idea because it doesn't want to be wrong. So your own self will fight you. This is why people have a challenge getting off of drugs and alcohol. Their ego doesn't want them to, because it doesn't want them to face what they'd have to face to let go of those behaviors. So the context that we're talking about that gives you access to this reality is the spiritual context, or the soul line. And the context of that soul line is that you already are a divine loving being, having and using your goal line experiences for the purpose of awakening on the soul line. That's what you're doing here. Not you alone, that's what we're all doing here. There is nothing else going on here. That's it. That is the game. There isn't any other game. We've been being told that for hundreds, thousands of years. As I say, now we're learning finally how to work with this. So, what's the healing process? We'll just share it with us. You get a sense of what we're talking about. All becauses anything that disturbs your peace, that upsets you, are in reality triggers to what we call unresolved issues, seeking resolution, and part of your spiritual curriculum. Why is it that certain things disturb certain people and not other people? I mean, ever wonder about that? In fact, there are certain people who the thing that disturbs you, they think it's great. It's very, very, very odd. Different things seem to disturb different people. Why is that? Because that is the way you were conditioned when you were small. We're literally conditioned into our patterns. Why would we do that? So that we would have the opportunity to learn how to erase them and step free of them. This is what, in our perception, in this reality that we're talking about, is what goes on here. This is what we call spiritual curriculum. In the East, it's called karma. It's not a bad thing any more than if you went to an algebra class. Algebra is not bad, it's just something you learn. It's another thing that you learn about. So that's what we're doing here. And what is this healing process? We'll share it with you. Maybe you can catch it, just start doing it, and you can skip the whole 10-month program. All right, so first of all, how you relate. Did we do that?
No, we didn't do it.
Okay. No, we're right on. So first of all, how you relate to the issue, we say, is the issue. How you relate to the issue is the issue. You don't heal by trying to change the thing that disturbs your peace. You heal by healing the place inside that got disturbed so it no longer disturbs you anymore. It doesn't stop you from taking action. You can take action on anything you want. Just do it from the place of the authentic self. Do it from the loving place. You don't have to do it from the disturbed place. You have a choice. Here's the choice. Number one, you can continue blaming your upset on outer circumstances. We're all pretty good at that. Boy, I was expert. Or we can accept personal responsibility for what's going on inside of us. There are no other choices. It's one or the other. There's no middle ground. Obviously, what we're selling at USM is choice 2. It takes some doing. How do you do this? What's involved? Well, as I said, that first step is you must be at least willing to consider the possibility and experiment with it. We're very big on becoming a spiritual scientist and running experiments and seeing what happens. Don't take any of this on faith or belief. We try this out and see how it works. So here's how we do it. What we have found is that healing is the application of loving to the places inside that hurt or are suffering. Gosh, how do you apply the loving to? You learn how to do it. You have it inside already because that's your very essence. It's just a question of, I never thought of how there are ways to do that. So this is one principle that we work with. How do you dissolve Rumi's barriers? How do you dissolve those places inside that are upset? Well, one thing we do here a lot is we give them a voice. You mean I could give the angry part of you? Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to get angry necessarily, although some people do. Just give it a voice. What's its beef? What's it trying to tell you? The second thing is you identify the limiting beliefs or judgments that upset is based upon. It'll tell you. If you just let it, it'll tell you, I'm upset because this is wrong, or they are doing this and it's not the right thing. They left me, or they're not taking care of me, or the thousands of other things that we will run in consciousness. The third thing is you let go of them. Just let go of them. How do you do that? I mean, I'm pretty attached to some of those beliefs. They're pretty strong inside of me. Well, we have this process that we call compassionate self-forgiveness. different from what most people think of as forgiveness. We don't forgive the other person for that terrible thing they do to me that I think is so awful. That's not what we really do. What we really do is we forgive ourselves for making the thing terrible in the first place. This is why I say you need to understand the context. I've hardly met anybody who ever understood that, even teachers of forgiveness. For what? For ever buying into those beliefs or judgments in the first place. Can we really do this? Yes, we really can do this. So we say here at USM, awakening is remembering who you are, the divine loving being behind your misinterpretations. And you know what the biggest misinterpretation that people suffer from on this planet? That you are somehow unworthy and deserving of punishment and suffering. There are even some religions that support that idea. It's not a way to get free. And again, it's not that we're against that. People are whatever in that they're in. All we're saying is, hey, have you come to the place where you're ready to wake up? We can show you how to do that and help you do it. All right, so here's the basic thing that we work with. I forgive myself. See, forgive myself. I am giving for myself the gift of letting go of this thing that I bought into in the first place. I forgive myself for ever buying into the illusion that I'm somehow unworthy and deserving of punishment and suffering. It's just absolute nonsense. Nobody is that. How do we know that? Well, we've seen at least 5,500 people in this classroom over the last 35 years come to that realization experientially, not knowing about it. What's the truth? The truth is that I'm a soul using a human experience for awakening, and my essential nature is loving, joyful, peace, creative, grateful, compassion, free. My favorite one isn't on there, funny. I have never met a spiritual teacher worth anything who didn't have a keen sense of humor. That's one of my criteria. All right, so the essence of healing, awakening, authentic wellness, and all of the words that you would use is all the same. Loving. It's loving. It's going up. And when you do that, what does that look like? Well, in the beginning, our ego is gigantic and speaks very loudly. Every now and then, people talk about the still small voice within. Every now and then you get a glimmer. As you do this work, what happens is there's a juxtaposition that starts to take place. So the ego starts to speak more loudly.
Softly.
The ego starts to... Thank you, Mary. As I was saying, the authentic self starts to speak more loudly, and the ego tends to get quieter. And eventually what happens, of course, is that the authentic self takes its rightful place as the master. Awakened people are being, I don't want to say run, that's not the right word, are being piloted by their authentic self. The ego becomes now a willing servant. I hear this, you have to kill your ego. Ooh, no, don't do that. We need an ego to function in a dualistic reality. Your authentic self could never go and get a job. Understand? It wouldn't make any sense, because it doesn't deal in that. It deals in all of these qualities that we just talked about. So, this brings us back to soul-centered living. The more that someone does this work, the more they find themselves living what we call a soul-centered life. Imagine what would happen in your life if you started living in your authentic self 10% of the time, then 20% of the time. And you just started ratcheting it up. Your whole life will change. Mostly the way you'd notice it is things that used to disturb your peace simply wouldn't. You would observe them. You deal with them when necessary. You just wouldn't be disturbed by it. In fact, you'd be a lot more effective. That's why there's so much of this kind of work going on now in the business environments. Because businesses are starting to understand they want real leaders who have these qualities. So I just share that with you. What kind of educational curriculum is required to support you in your conscious awakening and living into a more fulfilling life? Well, this one, of course, because that's what you're here to find out about. Now, please understand, we're not telling you this because we're trying to sell you the latest deal. This isn't the latest deal. This has been spoken of for thousands of years. But there are very few places that we're aware of that can deliver this to you experientially so that you have the experience for yourself, and that's how you learn. So, the transformed world you seek can only emerge by first transforming the world within you. You can try to change the world outside all you want. You will go nowhere until you start to change the world inside of you. And then everything will change. That world is your own consciousness. So we invite you to join us in the fall, and let's awaken together. We do have a fun time, believe it or not. And in fact, well, what more can I say about it? We're going to hear from...
Well, we're going to do some...
We're going to do what? What are we going to do? I've totally lost track of where we are and what we're doing.
All right. So, well, thank you, first of all, Ron. And, it's so amazing because we have been doing this work together for over 35 years. And so for me to hear Ron speak it, I probably heard this talk more than anybody else in the whole world. And,
except for me.
Except for you. And I must say, I find it compelling. I find it so alive. And what can we say? It's really a privilege to be able to share this with you. If you have questions about some part of what we shared, what Ron shared, we'd be happy to respond to that. And after we do a little bit of Q&A with you, then we're going to hear from 3 current students in the program who will share more about their experience of it and the changes that it is evoking inside of them.
So we're doing some Q&A now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so if you have something that you'd like us to respond to, if you just raise your hand, we call on you, walk over to that spot right there where Kevin is so that he can get you on that camera. So, excuse me, it'll go out to the people who are here online. So anybody have any questions about this? All right, so this gentleman does. So he's not fooling around.
On?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you start with your first name?
My name is Star. So the thing is, the human body is also an animal, and so it has certain natural, like instinctual reactions. There's a lot of things going on in my head, and it's all kind of like tied together. But anyway, like, if right now someone came in through one of those doors and slammed the door behind, like, let's say they were a little late and they just came in, they didn't know where they were here, and they came in through some other door, and then they just very quietly, they realize they're in a spiritual place, folded hands, pranam, namaste. They quietly come in without disturbing them. That's normal, moral, ethical human behavior. That's considerate and higher conscious awareness. If they slam the door, it's not necessary. They could have entered without slamming. I live with a bunch of people who slam doors constantly.
They could have, yes.
Pardon me?
Yes, they could have come in quietly.
Okay, so I live with people that slam doors constantly, and the animal needs to sleep or relax or whatever. So it's like, I understand, like, adjusting our mind to not be upset. And I liked what you said earlier about that I could still activate. I could still communicate with them, but come from a loving place.
Yeah.
Without, like the ego thing. But another thing is this, I've heard this before about...
But before you go on, I'd like to respond to part of what you shared. it's like we are multidimensional in consciousness. So what you're saying has accuracy to it. We do have a choice about what level of consciousness we wish to hold as our primary identification. So this program is really designed to assist people in letting go of the misidentification of themselves as their mind, their emotions, and their body, to recognize, I have a mind, I have emotions, and I have a body, but my most essential nature is loving. And so I'm a center of pure loving awareness.
There was something else I thought of when I was sitting there was perhaps the natural response that, like, if I'm relaxing in any way, whether it's sleeping, meditating, praying, reading, writing, watching educational DVDs, listening to educational audiobooks, whatever, I'm trying to relax and enjoy my life in my own room that I pay for, and then someone slams the door.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that one of your I'm upset because is just when people slam doors. Is that accurate?
What I was trying to say is I'm loving myself. I'm loving myself by preferring that I could relax without that obnoxiousness. And this is related to trying to forgive like ancient things like childhood deprivations, neglects, and abuses that put me in that position. Why don't I own my own home where there aren't other people who are obnoxious? I have to just rent a cheap room in a cheap part of town and live with a bunch of unconscious people. And so the thing is, it might not have bothered me consciously so much when I was a young adult because I didn't realize, but the more I grow and learn and evolve and become more mature, and now I'm a mature grown-up, I look back and I realize, oh my God, those parents were horrible. They were, in my opinion, they were like demonic. And they set me up with a lack of education so that I don't have enough money to pay for a decent home. It's all related. So that's why I'm in the position where I can still now be abused by other grown-ups, and a lot of that abuse seems like similar to how I was abused as a kid.
Here's my question for you. See, can you see that it might be possible to just put down that whole story? Can you see how you could if you really wanted to?
Yeah, I like what you say about the spiritual growth and awareness, and I do try to do that spiritual alchemy, spiritual transformation. Like it helps me become more compassionate, more understanding. I try to learn from everything every moment.
Wonderful. You're on the right track.
You know, and what I would say to you, it's like every person in this room experienced certain conditioning in their growing up. And I don't think we really touched on it in what Ron shared this evening, but part of how we look at that is that each person comes to the earth and takes the body and they enroll in their own specific Earth School curriculum. So that includes the things that we came to heal, the things we came to learn, but it also includes the gifts that we came to share.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking about that too. If you didn't mention, I was going to say service, because that's one way that I find that I enjoy it. Like, you know, like I enjoy handing out leaflets, like being a divine messenger.
Yes.
It used to be my original poetry, but now the internet I can just give that away.
Sure.
But even if I find anything, like when I was on my way over here and I RSVP'd, I put a BCC to a bunch of my friends I thought might enjoy coming to this thing too.
Lovely.
So I just enjoy trying to spread higher consciousness every chance I get. And so even when I'm at my place, I'm trying to just relax, and then someone slams the door, I'm thinking to myself, how can this be positive? How can I transform this to positive? Well, it's a motivation for me to get out of the house. Then I have like 4 million people in LA I can interact with, and usually all that's positive.
You know, I loved what you said about service, because service is the natural impulse of the soul. And I think one of the greatest opportunities to experience joy on the planet really is through the process of choosing to be of service. So I applaud you in that.
And what I can assure you is that if you were to take this class, I would do my utmost to make sure that nobody slams any doors in this room. You have my word.
The doors of heaven will never be slammed on us.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Someone else who has a question about what we shared, or about how these principles and practices might relate to some aspect of your life that you're currently experiencing.
Okay, here we
All
go
right.
over here.
Yes, if you would go over to Kevin, then he'll give you the mic and we'll hear your question. And if you'd be so kind as to start with your name, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Samantha.
Samantha?
Yes.
Hello.
I was wondering, why does our ego get so big? And why does that become such a reality to us, to the point where it's so hard to let it go?
You know, it's so interesting that you asked that question, because there's a woman on our staff who's going to have a baby in less than a month. And so we're all in eager anticipation of that event.
I give her 2 weeks.
And we're all looking forward to the experience of meeting that baby. And part of what is so incredible about being in the presence of a baby is they emanate pure love. So your question is a very good one. What happens to us? What happens? You know, and we have a friend who has 2 young children, and he's often telling us about them and things that they say, which are so extraordinary. And as our experience indicates to us that we come onto the planet, we are pure love, we're born into a human family, we receive certain conditioning, and around the age of 5 or 6, children start to experience what is referred to as the veil dropping. And so there starts to be a forgetting of their essential nature. And the conditioning of the ego begins to occur in a fairly thorough and comprehensive kind of way. And so, how does the ego get so big? Part of what I think is important to remember is that physical world reality exists in duality. In other words, there's positive and negative, as Ron showed. There's what we judge to be good or right or bad and wrong. And so we're conditioned to see through egocentric eyes rather than through soul-centered eyes. And one of the very first process that we do in the class on Friday night of the October class weekend is one in which we assist people in beginning to remember. We teach them seeing the loving essence and heart-centered listening. So we teach them how to see through the eyes of their heart, to listen with the ears of their heart. And that is a foundational practice in spiritual psychology. And it's a practice through which we start to experience more of our own heart. We tend to look more for the goodness in other people, the loving essence that is within them. And as we do that, we start to remember. The ego becomes big because we forget. We forget who we are, and this 5-sense reality is filled with a myriad of distractions that we will continue to forget who we are until something occurs and we start to remember. This is a course in remembering, in awakening, in removing those barriers that keep us looking through harsh eyes, the judgmental, dualistic eyes of the ego. And we start to open our heart. We start to recognize more of the pure loving essence of who we truly are, and that is present in every human being. this radically changes everything. So I don't know if I'm speaking to your question or not, but hopefully there's something in that for you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Well, shall we hear from some of the students?
Sure.
All right, Rena, would you go first? Rena is currently in the first year program.
So that means that she just completed the 9th month, and then what she has left to go is the 5-day lab that will happen in July.
Hi, my name is Rena, and like Ron said, I'm in the USM program right now in Soul Centered Living 1. My life before USM wasn't very happy. I was in a very dark place. I was in an unhealthy relationship. I blamed my husband for everything. Of course, I was perfect. And that wasn't serving me. I was lonely. I had 3 adult children that just left the house, and my husband traveled a lot. So that left me with just me. And I didn't really know who I was anymore. Without the identity of my children and my husband, I just didn't know who I was. I felt very lost. So my daughter wanted to go to school in California somewhere, so I decided to join her. When I came out here, I was very fortunate to find a therapist who was a graduate of USM also. So he began telling me about concepts of USM. And the first one was, the issue is not the issue itself, but it's how you relate to the issue. Well, that one blew me away, because I was thinking, okay, so my issues really aren't that significant. It's how I relate to them. So I started exploring that, and that was huge for me. Then he went on to talk about other concepts and how to live the USM life. And then he gave me the suggestion that maybe I would be interested in the class and to come to the info session, just like you. Well, I came and I thought this would be an excellent fit for me. So, what happened to me at USM? Well, I began to learn a lot. It was mind-blowing for me. The first weekend we had our trios. I sat there and talked for 10 minutes, possibly 15 minutes straight. And somebody was actually listening to me. And I still get choked up about that because I was never listened to. I was always being the one listening. So I left there and thought, wow, that's a very interesting experience. Like Ron and Mary said, the whole class is very experiential. And that's how you learn deep down. So the other thing I learned is about spiritual curriculums, and I understood that my husband had a spiritual curriculum, and that's probably why he did what he was doing. I had a spiritual curriculum, and that's why I was in the relationship with him. So that led me to the conclusion that there was no blame, and I was not a victim. It just all was what it was. So through that, I learned acceptance. I learned how to surrender to Spirit's guidance, which brought me to the place where I was giving up control. I didn't want to try to change anything anymore. I was accepting it and closing my eyes and letting Spirit guide me. I also learned how to love myself. I always heard people say, love yourself, love yourself. I always thought I loved myself. Yeah, I got my hair done, I got my nails done, I bought clothes. I love myself. I'm pretty cool. But yeah, that's not really loving yourself. That's not really doing the hard work of loving yourself. And how I learned that, and I would love to share this because this was huge for me, was I took my situation and I thought, what if one of my children were in this relationship? What would I tell them? What would I want for them? And I know what I would want for them, to get out. That's an abusive relationship. I don't want to see you. I love you. So I took that information and I reversed it onto myself. And that was the hard part of loving myself. I got out of the relationship. I'm still in the process of getting out of the relationship. So now my life is freer. I feel lighter. I feel more love. I'm breaking down barriers. I'm accepting love. I'm giving more love. I know more about myself. I know my interests. I actually have a goal for the first time that doesn't include my children or my husband. I love this work, so I'm going to pursue a master's degree in depth psychology. And I'm very, very thankful to have the opportunity to be in this class. Thank you, Ron and Mary.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. So Ravi. Yes. Ravi is also in the first year class.
Hi guys, I'm Ravi, and I'm also a student of Soul-Centered Living 1. So my story. So 2 years ago, I was living in Hong Kong. I was running a large company. I was working like mad. All I did was work. And then I got a wake-up call. I ended up in the hospital. I was having septic shock. It was a 50-50 chance of making it. And I was just there, and the day after I went through the big sort of rough patch, I said to myself, this is not the life that I want. This is not fulfilling at all. I'm not enjoying this. I thought I was. I thought this was what I wanted, but it really wasn't. So I sat there and I'm like, time to go. I'm gonna leave Hong Kong. I made the decision that day. A couple days later, I went in and told my bosses that I was leaving. I ran a pretty large organization, so it was a 1-year period that I had to give them as notice. So I had to phase out over a year. So I phased out over the year, moved to LA. A cousin of mine had done conscious health and healing at USM, which was the third year of a program. She flew every month from Dubai to attend it, and she told me about it. And Loyalty to Your Soul, which is a book by Ron and Mary, was my go-to book. That and Autobiography of a Yogi were the 2 books that have really moved my life. So every time I was going through a real crisis, that's what I would do. I would go through that book. I would go through all the exercises. And then I thought to myself, what do I really want out of life? And I chose to come here. So I moved to LA, just kind of moved here. Signed up to USM. I moved here last August, started last October. My health has been not great. November, I got the doctors here. I was blessed to get amazing doctors. And I found out, well, I knew all along, but I found out it had progressed worse than I thought, that I needed a kidney transplant. Now, my direct family, who's amazing, couldn't do it. They would all love to, but they can't because of health reasons. So, I spoke to Ron and Mary about it. They really helped me realize this is my spiritual curriculum, right? And part of what I need to do is be willing to accept other people's spiritual curriculum. So if somebody does want to give it to me, that's part of their spiritual curriculum. I went to social media with this. I got 6 or 7 people to come forward so far. Now, nothing has worked out, but just imagine 6 or 7 people that have seen my video have decided that they wanted to give me a part of their body. Now, they've gone through testing at UCLA. Some of them pulled out for various reasons. Some of them have gone through testing and it hasn't worked out yet. I'm sure something will work out. What I can say is that USM has given me the tools to, despite being in this situation, live a life I love, share my love, and I'm just so touched. Really, really grateful.
I acknowledge you, Ravi. You are so courageous. And I also love in what you share just how clear your intention is and how you've opened up to receive the gift of a kidney from your universe.
Thank you. And I just want to say to everybody that this class has been a real blessing in my life. It's changed my life. And if you guys have the resonance to be here, next year is the last year with Ron and Mary, and they are incredible. I am so grateful.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you. And Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I'm nervous. I'm currently a student in the Soul-Centered Living 1 program, and I'm so honored and grateful to be here to share my experience with all of you. My mom is a graduate of the 2-year master's program, and when she was going through her USM journey, she kept encouraging me to look into it. She kept encouraging me to do the information night, go to one of the workshops, and I was like, Mom, I'm good. I just married the woman I was with for 7 years. We bought a beautiful home together. I have a very, very successful career and a dream job. So from the goal line perspective, I was killing it. Ego was happy. I was good. If you asked me a year ago if I was happy, I would have told you that I forgot what happiness felt like. My marriage only lasted 10 months. We got divorced, and it took a really big toll on me. It took me to a dark place. It put me in a hole where I didn't really think I was ever going to see the light again. So consequentially, I had to sell the beautiful home, and a few months later, I got laid off from the dream job. And I was really forced to just sit with myself, because everything on the outside that made me happy for all these years was gone. And what was left was emptiness and just a feeling of lost and not knowing, there wasn't any love there for myself. I depended so much on everything on the outside to fulfill me. So then Mom came back and said, Natalie, do you want to try USM? And I gracefully accepted, and I did the Loyalty to Your Soul program, which is a workshop, it's a 3-day workshop that they offer. And this workshop was transformative for me as it shined light on the healing and growth opportunities that would be available to me if I committed to the 10-month program. And given the place I was in, I was ready to step into the light. So going into the 10-month program, I had 3 kind of big intentions. 1 was to love myself. That's the biggest. That's what held the most weight. 2 was to be in a healthy relationship and to break out of these old patterns of bringing in toxic relationships into my life. And 3 was to seek some clarity on my career. So I'm 9 months into the program, and from the work that I've done, I could tell you that I've forgiven myself for the judgments I placed on my failed marriage at 33. I've forgiven myself for the judgments I placed on my ex-wife for her not showing up the way I wanted her to in the marriage. And before, my mom would always tell me, everyone loves Natalie's energy. They want to be around Natalie's energy. And I never understood it. And now standing here 9 months later, I can tell you that I don't just understood it, I am it. I feel it, I step into it, and I wake up in it every single day. So the second intention that I wanted to be was a relationship. And I have manifested a beautiful relationship with a very sweet, sweet woman. And then third was the career. So, I think every day a lot of us go to our jobs just not loving what we do, and I'm completely guilty of that up until now. I was bought into the misbelief growing up that success was tied to your financial income. Your salary was tied to your success. That's how you define success. I've been able to disconnect from that misbelief. And last weekend, I kind of had my USM aha moment when we were talking about heartfelt dreams. And I realized that I could find something that I'm passionate about, which is sign language. I was a sign language major for 2 years, and I switched majors for whatever reason. And I just let it fall to the side. And this is my passion. This is what I sign to songs in the car. If I see someone deaf, I just want to go up and talk to them. And now through this work, I'm able to take what I'm passionate about and cultivate a plan to better serve myself in my career and also give back to a community. So it's been successful for me. And I'll wrap with this. The things that happen in this room, for me, the shifts, the awarenesses, the transformations, the awakening, is the best gift that I could have ever given myself. I am beyond grateful. Ron and Mary, you have created such a safe, beautiful, powerful space here. And I'm so thankful for you being here and sharing your wisdom, and it's just been a transformative experience. And I'm thankful for all of you for listening.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay, so what's next?
All right, so.
We bring Licia back?
Yes, so Licia.
Well, thank you for the wonderful stories. Those were wonderful to hear. Weren't they great to hear these? Really appreciate sharing of your lives so beautifully, so honestly. So, and thank you, Ron and Mary, I love the new ways that you continually, what's amazing? These people are continually evolving how they give this program. And when I was here 20 years ago, that was when I was a student, it was fabulous. So really, as I think of this, I'm a professional instructional designer. I could have easily gone, this is good. like, I'm done. I'm going to just do other. These two do not. They are continually receiving from Spirit and evolving this program. So this year's program, in addition to, as you heard, Ron and Mary, that this is the last time that they will be facilitating this 10-month program. In addition to that, this program is at its best because these two incredible people are at their best in terms of that consciousness that they are bringing through to us. And it is quite a gift, as you've heard from the students. It is quite a gift to be in their presence. So thank you for devoting your lives to this and to all of us who have benefited from it.
You know, it's so funny what Lisa is sharing. Last night after dinner, I said to Ron, you know, I'm just really missing the ocean. I need to walk on the beach and I need to hear the ocean. So we drove from our home up to Zuma Beach, and it was before sunset, and we're walking and we're hearing the water and we're smelling the air, and the wind is just whipping around, and it was really wonderful. We watched the sun go down, and we got home sometime after 9 o'clock, and we still had not worked on the PowerPoints for tonight. So Ron said, come on, let's just do it. So we sat down, and we just got into such a flow. And we stopped finally at 12:15 when all of a sudden something weird happened with the program where it started duplicating itself. We said, this is feedback, time to stop. But we got up at 7 o'clock this morning. We started right in. We only had coffee. We didn't get dressed. We didn't, you know, we just were doing our PowerPoint. And we finished about 9:15, which was really good because I needed to leave the house at 10. You know, you just never know when Spirit is going to inspire you and when the flow of energy is going to be present. And that's really what we follow.
That's what we follow.
Yeah, and what keeps it alive and fun and fresh. Because, you know, one could think of this as like teaching the same thing for 35 years. How could they do that? That sounds dreadful.
It's easy, we don't.
Yes, but that's part of the answer. But you know what it is? It's the students. It's always alive. It's dynamic. It's real. That's part of what I love about this work, is that what goes on in the classroom is very real. And it's about where people really live inside themselves. It's about what matters to them most in their lives, and the community that is formed, and the safety and the sacredness of the space is really incredible. And the most amazing people come here. So that's my 2 cents.
That is so true. So enrollment is now open. And in addition to the 3 lovely students who shared this evening, Rena, Ravi, and Natalie, who I'm sure would love to talk with you more if you would be interested in talking with them about their experience. There's also 2 other people who are also volunteering tonight to also just speak with whoever. They are both graduates, and they're really doing this out of their love for the program. So if you guys 2 can just stand up, David and Karen, they'll be here. They're also here, as well as these lovely women over here. There's Ashley, and you may have already talked to Ashley. She's USM's admissions, and she would love to talk to you tonight if you have any questions. Also Nancy O'Leary, who is the Director of Education here, so she has great information about the program. And USM's also the other members of the USM admissions team, Lisa and Eliza are both here, as well as a host of grads and students. How many people are grads and students of this program?
Wow.
Okay.
Talk to them.
They come here because they love this place. They can't get enough of it, and they adore talking to people who are considering the program, as well as myself. I am happy to talk, and Ron and Mary are also going to be in the back of the room, and so you can also swing by and say hello and talk to them. So I want to share, if you are clear that you want to be in this program for next year, I encourage you to see Shabnam tonight. You can start that process tonight. And particularly this year, it is most important, if you are clear, to take action, because the community knows that this is the last time that Ron and Mary are facilitating this program. And so you can imagine this class is filling up quickly. We only have a specific amount of spots, chairs available in this room. And so we encourage you, if you are clear about that, please take action. Let's see what else. Oh, for folks who are online, we at this point should have already posted the link. So if you are also interested, you can request a call from admissions using that link that should be posted right underneath the video on the web page. Classes start on October 6th. So that's the first full weekend in October, a Friday night. And there's also some upcoming events that we wanted to share, and actually Natalie did an exquisite job of describing Loyalty to Your Soul, the workshop. Can we get that slide up, John? It is? Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. And I'll talk about next steps after I talk about this. So as Natalie shared, this workshop is a fabulous way to take one weekend and get a really wonderful foundation of what we do here in the 10-month program. So that is open to the public. You can bring yourself, your friends, co-workers. We've had whole families, large amounts of a company come all together. It's a great workshop. Ron and Mary and myself will be facilitating that workshop in August. There's information in the back about it. If you are interested in taking your next steps for the 10-month program, then we encourage you to register. What that looks like is going to the back of the room to Shabnam. Can you wave your hand? All right, there she is. And that's in putting down a first month tuition deposit. So that starts your process in terms of registration. And that is required to reserve your space. And then, pending your acceptance into the program, there is an application process. Everybody here is very familiar with that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the back or all of these lovely ladies about that process as well. So that's it. You know, if you want to join us, this is the best year to do it. It is an exquisite program. We also have cookies and refreshments that we're going to bring out. This is a wonderful community to network with, to meet one another, to say hello. So we encourage you to stay, have some fun, talk to all of us, check it all out, and we just thank you for taking your evening today. And folks online, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight.
Okay.
Great. Very good.
You can use the pen.